So I returned to just briefly the 15th Amendment, and um, I just kind of want to make clear that I'm inserting a lot of my own opinions about something, which I'm opening up for a discussion. And I always like to remind you guys that I'm not, excuse me, you know, uh, um, my opinion is my opinion, and your opinion is your opinion. So we all have different thoughts on this. I mean, it's clear what I'm trying to show you, though, is that there existed these two tensions of what to resolve after the war, which is to again to remind you that the to, the rehabilitation of the entire nation to get back to the United States of America, and at the same time what to do with this large amount of recently freed black slaves in a society that viewed them only as slaves, and what would be the commitment of the North to making the South change an entire cultural worldview? It's not, okay, you can get rid of slavery, but the racism was required to make it thrive. Well, how do you address that? Especially when that racism was already a part of many Northern opinions about blacks. Um, and why should the unity of the United States be hampered by a bunch of people that they just did liberate after all, and really aren't fully like the rest of the nation? And so why not, at their expense, let the greater good take place? I mean, that's what I think that you would hear argued from the more moderate conservative camp. For black Americans and for some of the more radicals in the abolitionist camp, you might say, well, why do we fight them to reward the people who started this war, to get the same positions that they had before, and to basically be just fine after this whole thing, after 500,000 Americans died, right? So what I will say is this, is that I think on the federal level, things like the amendments to the Constitution would help set up a framework for the long-term abilities of black Americans to defend their rights based on the actual law of the land. Martin Luther King Jr. Made an argument essentially saying that, like, he pointed out that the movement that he had to desegregate the South and for blacks to be treated equally wasn't radical. He was simply saying it's already written. All of our laws are all set up quite nicely. It just needs to be implemented. There needs to be a way for the federal government not to allow the South to bypass the actual laws that we already had established. And so in that case, Martin Luther King Jr. was saying, I'm not a radical. I'm somewhat conservative. I'm paraphrasing him. I'm simply saying, practice what you preached in your law. That's all, right? Okay. And so having that set up there would be to his advantage, because he was right? Okay. But ultimately, it would take a long time to get there. I was born in 1973, and it's in the late 60s that we still have blacks not being able to drink from the water fountain as whites in the South. But I'm moving ahead here. So, impeaching the president. So, as I was mentioning, radicals, they saw this all as basically a conspiracy of sorts, and they were really annoyed with Johnson. And basically, they wanted to set up a kind of order in the South and Reconstruction. It would also protect blacks, and they had what I would say would be just, that's in my opinion, arrangement set up for black former slaves, and of kind of bringing order in the South on the terms of the federal government. Johnson didn't want to support that. He dismissed the Secretary of War, Stanton, and that was a violation of this Tenure Office Act. Now, the details are, I mean, you can study those and learn more about those if you want. They found an excuse to impeach him. And, you know, as we see in many political debates, the actual act of dismissing Secretary of War Stanton was about as relevant, I would say, as when Bill Clinton gets impeached for lying about an affair. These men had political enemies that were angry at what they were about and were wanting to find a way to get them out of office. Okay, so rightly or wrongly, I think it's fair to say in both cases that's what that was all about. So remember, being impeached didn't what it just simply meant is that you were then, as a president, up for trial to debate if you could be removed as president. And there was one vote short of requiring a majority to get him impeached. Okay, so talk about the power of voting. And it was moderate and conservative Republicans that didn't like the precedent of a president being able to be removed based on what I just said. You know, I think many of those radical Republicans saw this as an abuse of the impeachment process, because it was understood why he was really being impeached, and it wasn't really directly a part of that what he did, if you're following me. Okay, so he had a controversial presidency. Now, the next president we're going to get is President Grant, which you would think would bring a lot more stability and order. Okay, he was a Republican. I mean, here is a several times war hero. But, you know, this always shows up in history. You know, revolutionaries and warriors don't always make good leaders. Good leaders don't always make good warriors and good revolutionaries. You're really doing several different things. You know, it's kind of like, pardon me for going into nowadays, Donald Trump clearly knows how to run businesses. He's a wealthy capitalist. But could his policies, whether we like him or not, be good for the American economy if he was running the country? Running your own private capital and running a state are two different things. And it doesn't look like the majority of finance capital, in other words, the bulk of capital in the United States, actually sees him as good for markets. He doesn't seem to have that endorsement. That could change. But, I mean, and that's what's interesting, right? You can be good at certain things, and then in another role, not so good. President Grant, as president, he doesn't have such a great legacy. He was accused of cronyism, in other words, supporting his friends, and for a lot of reasons, which you can go over later, didn't go well. And ultimately, what I'm doing, and you know, the textbook I want you to read because it covers a lot more, and it hits on the development of the failure of Reconstruction to do anything other than reintegrate the South back into the North. By the 1870s, as your textbook points out, essentially blacks were in a terrible state. Laws were set up, Jim Crow, essentially segregation, and a new form of slavery is going to be imposed on blacks in the South. And they're going to have groups like the Ku Klux Klan that are going to able to terrorize blacks and white supporters when they can to really rein in the old world order of the South. So here we see it was founded by a Confederate general named Nathan Bedford Forrest. My friend and colleague who gave me a lot of information on growing up in segregated South as a white Jewish Southerner in Florida said that he lived near a high school that was named Forest High School after the Confederate general. I'm going to return a little bit more to this kind of abandonment of Reconstruction, the counter-revolution, if you will, in this one last lecture.